Hello. Welcome back to Lefty Knits. If you're new here, my name is Molly. I'm a knitter based out of the San Francisco Bay Area where I live with my fiance and our cat Lola. And on this channel, I just share all sorts of crafty things that I've been up to recently, which mostly amounts to knitting, although spinning is now becoming a big part of my crafting repertoire. Not well, but I'm spinning a lot. It's been quite a long time since I've done just a sit-down podcast where I talk about my recent makes, my recent acquisitions, my works in progress, so that's what I want to do today. I do have quite a bit to get through, although some of the things that I talked about, for example, in my What I Made in 2024 video are probably going to get a little bit less play today than they might, especially once they're finished and blocked. Some of those things that I was in progress with are still in progress in the same spot because blocking in the winter in my really cold apartment that's very small is super slow, but we're getting there. Finally, I took something off the blocking mats that's been there for like a week and it's only a tiny bit damp, but I think I just have to live with it. As I alluded to, I have been spinning, so I also have quite a few things to talk about in that arena. I'm going to save that until the end, although that is where the bulk of my recent acquisitions have come in. Like I said, I don't think I've sat down and done a podcast since December, so I haven't bought yarn in the new year, but I do have a lot of yarn from December, basically, from my travels, from a pre-order coming in that I talked about a little bit in my de-stash video, so there's just quite a bit that we really need to talk about. Some of these things are finished objects now that weren't even whips when I last told you about what I've been working on. So let's go ahead and jump right in with my finished objects. Neither of my finished objects are like finished. I'll start with the one that's, I guess, more finished because it was finished and then I decided to unfinish it. This is my September sweater by Petite Knit. It is almost done. As you can see, the sleeves are in progress. I made this with Knit Pick Simply Wool Worsted Twist in the colorway Winkle. That is a 100% wool yarn, 218 yards per 100 grams, I believe. It's either 218 or 219, so somewhere in that range. I finished the knitting of this in time for my What I Knit in 2024 video, although I still called it a whip, I think. And it was because it hadn't been blocked and I hadn't sewn the ends in. And when I got home from my trip and I started to feel better, once I had filmed that video, I did block it. And it came out really well. This is like probably my best work to date on a sweater in terms of like the fit, the way that it fits versus my vision, all of that, with the small exception of the sleeves. I ended up going back and frogging the ribbing on the sleeves on both sides, and I knit, I guess, a little less than this much more, like this much more minus the sleeves. So I think I knit probably 3 extra inches, and you can kind of see, I think, I know it's pretty visible to my eye, like the blocked portion versus the unblocked portion of the sleeve. I've been struggling with sleeves kind of forever. When I knit them exactly to pattern or what to fit like without blocking, a lot of times they end up kind of dwarfing my hands. So for this, I knit it a little shorter and it just didn't block out as long as I wanted it to. And I thought about letting it be. I did talk about destashing this yarn, and I ended up using about 20 more grams of the yarn to finish the sleeves after I offered it to my friend. So she's going to get a little less yarn. But yeah, this is a yarn I'm planning on destashing the rest of because I think I've done it justice in my own projects. I used 1,055 yards or 965 meters of the yarn. And I only used one strand, unlike the pattern, which calls for, I think the original intention was to use like 3 strands of mohair held together, although Petite Knit does suggest an option for 1 strand of mohair held with a worsted or DK weight. I do think that this turned out really well. It's like a nice fabric. It does have some good like heft to it and some good structure to it. I think I'm glad that I did this in a non-superwash yarn that will kind of hold its shape a little better, especially because I expect it to grow a little bit more as I wear it more and as it's out in the world more. I do, like I said, need to block the remaining sleeves that I've reknit, and I really don't want to block the whole thing again because, like I said, blocking has been taking forever. So I'll probably try to like lean it off of a chair and just dip the like half the sleeves in water and just block this portion. And hopefully that works out. I can imagine the sleeves might actually end up being a little long now, depending on how the blocking is. I might try to block them a little wider because they are like pretty form-fitting, and that might make them slightly shorter. But if they are long, I figure I can just fold the cuffs and it'll be fine. So this is done. The ends are all sewn in on the body. They were sewn in on the sleeves until I undid it, and I'm really excited to have this. So now that the other thing I'm about to talk about is off my blocking mats, this will be next. My second finished object is the Port Sweater by Ozetta. Here it is. I made this in, oh, my leg's a little wet. Like I said, this is slightly damp. I made this in Norotanin, which is a 50% wool, 25% silk, 25% alpaca yarn, and it is 275 yards per 100 grams. I held that with a strand of Knit Picks Aloft, which is a mohair silk yarn, 72% mohair, 28% silk, and 260 yards per 25 grams. And I use the colorway Oat. So this sweater's a drop shoulder, like turtleneck, mock neck, with this added detail of some ribbing on the shoulder. I haven't tried this on since I finished blocking it because, like I said, it's still not quite dry. I struggled to figure out how to make the sleeves like I don't really have enough room to block it out in like a T position where both of the sleeves are out. So I tried at first to kind of like stretch them this way, but keep the shoulder. It's really hard for me to block because I just don't have the space. I don't really have a private area, especially one where my cat won't be like walking all over it with her dirty little paws. So it's just a little bit of a struggle. And that doesn't help when our apartment is cold and it's winter and all this other stuff. So blocking is still, I mean, I think it's good enough that I can probably just sew in the ends and try to not like fold it really tightly. I didn't sew in the ends. I have recently found myself preferring to sew in the ends after I block. I think it's helpful if I need to like re-knit parts, if there's anything super wrong, if the yarn stretches out. Like, I don't tend to have trouble like hiding the ends in the finished blocked work, but I can also see how some people might prefer to sew in the ends first, because then as they block, they can like hide the ends and stretch out the areas where maybe sewing in the ends has like made the gauge a little wonky. But this is just my personal and current preference. So this is knit top down. You start with the back, you pick up stitches for the front, and then you add the neckline later. It has quite a lot of ribbing at the bottom. I don't know if I did exactly to pattern the ribbing on the bottom and the sleeves, but it has this long ribbed portion, which isn't my usual style. And we'll see if the sleeves, like how the length of these end up working out, because I might end up folding them more often than not. But I am really happy with how this turned out. It doesn't feel too like floppy, and I think the neck will be good. Like I said, I haven't tried this on since blocking, so I might have to redo some of it, but I just am pretty happy with how this turned out. I made another sweater with this yarn, a brioche, or I think it was half fisherman's rib sweater. It stretched out, it really didn't work. I had modded the pattern in a stupid way to like make it was a V-neck, and I made it really deep, so it was like at my belly button. I frogged it into these balls that had like the tenon and the aloft wound together. And so it's nice to have those out of my stash. I think I used all but about 30 grams maybe of the tenon. So I do have a little bit more if I have the same problem with my sleeves. I did decide against doing a sewn bind off on the sleeves, the neckline, and the hem, which I've made my peace with. I do really like how it looks. It's my preference to do tubular bind off, but because the yarn was single ply, like thick, thin yarn, I was really worried that it would break. So if you watched my What I Knit in 2024 video, I talked about my Stockholm slipover, which I will not be talking about today. I still haven't blocked it because I've been focusing on blocking these two and dealing with them. But that is made in like a single ply yarn, and I really struggled with sewing the bind off. The yarn kept breaking. So with that in mind, I decided for this single ply, even held with mohair, and even though it feels a little stronger, I just was like, I don't really want to deal with that again. So I just sewed it, and yeah, it's a little bit of a different color. I think it reads slightly pinker in person than it's reading on camera. The colorway is called Salmon. I don't think I said that. So it's a slightly pinker orange, I think, than you're seeing here, but I think it turned out pretty well. I was a little worried that, like, for example, on the neckline, when you're working both sides down to the middle where you join them, that like the yarns would be really different in this section, but I don't think that ended up being the case. I think it ended up working out that the colors are distributed relatively evenly. There's not much pooling or anything like that happening, and I'm excited to be able to wear this, barring any sort of problems. I will definitely be giving you a try on of this next time or on my Instagram, so make sure to stick around if you want to see how this actually looks on a person. So moving on, I have 2 works in progress. Only one that I've been working on with some consistency recently. So we'll start with that one, because even though it's my second cast on, I think the other one leads into my long list of acquisitions. So we'll start with my Cumulus O-neck. That's a pattern by Petite Knit. And I am knitting this in Rosa Pomar Mondim in the colorway M77 and Camarose Minnetzol in the colorway Lis Mint. This is what it looks like. Is that the, yeah, I think this is the back. I recently have split for sleeves. I'm making the second size, and this is not a whim cast on, but something that astute observers might notice is not what I originally planned for this yarn. For this yarn, I was originally planning to make the lento. I swatched with size 8, US 8 needles. I don't remember the millimeter size of that. 5 millimeter needles. I liked the fabric, and I didn't really want to go any looser with my gauge. And the gauge of that was 18 stitches per 4 inches, whereas the lento is 15 stitches per 4 inches. And at first I thought about like maybe buying another mohair or looking through my stash. I have some merino lace weight. Maybe I would buy a merino yarn. I like had all these ideas that I was playing with so that I could make the lento work, because I really wanted to knit the lento. But I think I have to accept that if I want to knit the lento, I probably won't be able to do it in a way that I prefer with a fingering and mohair or fluff yarn of some kind held together. The Minnetzol is not mohair, to be clear. To talk a little bit about the yarns, I think people are pretty familiar with Rosa Pomar Mondim. This is a 100% Portuguese wool yarn. It is 100 grams and 421 yards, or 385 meters. The Minnetzol is a little different. I have another ball here with the band on it. This is 54% baby alpaca, 36% lyocell, and 10% merino wool. And one ball is 25 grams and 200 meters. I don't know exactly what that is in yards, but 200 some yards. Because I couldn't imagine going down to the 15 stitch per inch gauge, I was like, oh, why don't I think about other patterns? So I looked at some other patterns. I only have 2 skeins of this yarn, so I only have like 840 yards of it. And I was like, I don't know. I almost feel like I need a slightly lower neck or something that's like okay to have kind of shorter sleeves. Like I needed to kind of be mindful of that when picking a pattern. I don't want like super short sleeves. So I figured maybe like a lower neckline of some kind might help make up for that. And I didn't really want to make a second regular cumulus blouse with the like V-neck. So I thought about the O-neck pattern. I'd kind of forgotten it existed, but it came up when I was searching for patterns that met my gauge. And at first, like it felt a little bit silly to buy the O-neck pattern when I have the regular pattern. I'm a pretty advanced knitter. I can like work with patterns and modify them to my liking. I thought about modifying it to have a more typical neck, but in the end, this was supposed to be my like easy project. This is something I don't really want to have to think about. And I didn't really want to do that math and that calculating and any sort of trial and error like that myself. So I just bought the O-neck pattern. I am just split 4 sleeves and the body. And I might end up doing a bit of ribbing. I think it would take more yarn. But I really feel like I might prefer that. So we'll play around with that maybe. But I think I might do ribbing on the edges instead of the I-cord edging that's meant to go around. I did the I-cord on the cumulus blouse and I like I-cord edging. I just think maybe it would be nice to have something a little bit different so I don't have 2 very, very similar sweaters that have like similar finishing too. I did have to restart this fully because I knit it with US 9 needles instead of US 8 at first, and it was really loose and I was kind of not sure about it. And the 8s were floating around attached to cables, like my interchangeable set. The 9s were attached to cables that I had been using for the September sweater. So that's how I kind of ended up getting mixed up, because that I used US 9s for. This I was using US 8. I think I used 8 for the ribbing there. So it just all kind of got messed up. And I really didn't want to use the 9s. I think if I was going to do that, it was pretty loose and I might as well maybe just do the Lento. So I had to rip it all out and restart. And that was kind of a bummer, but it actually works up pretty fast. It's nice working on all of these projects that are like 20 or fewer stitches per 4 inches, because working on so many in a row is not really my norm. But this has been my main whip. It's my like turn off my brain whip, and it is the most comfortable to knit. My next one, which I'm going to grab, give me 1 second. My next one doesn't excite me as much for a couple of reasons, but it's fine. It's fine. You know, not every knit is like the most exciting thing you've ever made. This is the basic ribbed sock by Kate Atherley. I have modded the pattern a bit, and I'm making this out of Bird's Nest Stitchery yarn in the colorway Blueberry and Celadon. No, Celadon is the base. Blueberry and Blood Moon. This is a yarn that's 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 400 yards per 100 grams. I got this at Fiber Artwork in Huntsville, Alabama, where I was for the holidays with my fiance's family. This is a local dyer to the area. They maybe exclusively sell their yarn through Fiber Artwork besides like shows and stuff. Or maybe they sell at other places in the area. I don't really know. but they are a local dyer. I was happy to see them a couple years ago, and I have bought various yarns from them over my years of going to Huntsville. These socks are a gift. I'm making them for my fiance's mom. She wears, I want to say like a women's size 10 or larger in US shoe sizes, so pretty big feet, which is part of why I modded this pattern the way I did. The pattern is, I believe, just written to be like one color. I'm going to take these off because they're clinking and loud. The pattern is knit to be just one color, and because this yarn has slightly lower yardage than some sock yarns, being this like 2-ply 400 yard per 100 gram base, I picked up this color as the contrast color, and I'll be doing the heel and toe in this color as well. And I wound these balls into, not this is just a smaller ball, but I wound, I believe, this color into 250 gram balls, or 2 balls that are half the size of the whole skein, so that I know how much I have if I'm like running into issues with the sock. When I first started knitting this, it was really fun. I hadn't done a sock in a while. I haven't done something so small circumference in a long time because I don't really knit socks, and I was having a good time, but I'm finding that this is hard on my hands. I have not been knitting as much fingering weight as I usually do, and I am using this 9-inch circular. I'm using US 1.5 needles, I believe, which is 2.5 millimeters, and it just was hurting my hands. I was working on it as my commute project, and I have been taking it on my commutes, but I haven't been knitting as much on my commutes. I think that the smaller gauge and having to like keep track of the ribbing, it's just 3x1 ribbing. It's not hard, but it's a little bit more work. It's a little bit more fiddly because it's fingering weight, and I find that I like get pain in my hands like here from, I think, holding it like holding my hand more tightly in this position than I do with larger needles, especially given the small circumference of the cord. My hands aren't really used to this anymore. I haven't picked this up in a little bit because, I mean, in part because of the spinning. That has taken over a lot of my crafting time, but I think I am going to try to commit 30 minutes a day to this. It doesn't have to be all at once, maybe like 3 10-minute chunks, just so that I am making some progress. My fiance's mom is planning to visit in May, and I'd love to be able to give these to her then. She's done a lot for me over the years. She's been very good to me. I really like her, so I want to give her socks, and I gave her one pair of socks before, and she was wearing them while I was there. Apparently they fit. Socks are not a typical gift knit from me to others because they are a labor of love, but she does seem to really appreciate them, and she buys me yarn, which we'll talk about later. So I want to return the favor by making something out of yarn, especially yarn local to her, for her. In terms of acquisitions, like I said, I have quite a few because my acquisitions that I haven't talked about go back to mid-December, maybe even early December of last year. That's 2 months ago, or a little more than 2 months ago now. The first two are those 2 skeins of Celadon from Bird's Nest Stitchery, and I actually have a 3rd skein of Celadon and a couple other purchases from Fiber Artwork that I want to talk about. So I ended up buying 1 more skein of Celadon while I was there. This colorway is called Paint-Splattered Denim, and basically I wanted to buy some to use for myself, and I figured that whatever was remaining of the 2 yarns that I'm using for my fiance's mom's sock would go well with this colorway. I think it reads maybe maybe not, a little bit lighter in person, a little more gray, but I thought that these would bring out these pink and purple flecks throughout well, and I would be able to utilize the extra. I'm expecting a lot more of this extra because this is my contrast color, and I'll be able to use this with the remains to make maybe like a tee or a tank or something like that. I have a lot of those kind of in mind vaguely from my purchases, I suppose. So that is the plan there. Also at Fiber Artwork, I bought some Ancient Art Yarns Little Nettle Soft. So this is a yarn out of Canada, actually. I believe the Calgary area. And Little Nettle Soft is 68% superwash merino, 32% nettle fiber, and it's 385 yards or 350 meters per 100 grams. And I got the colorways Russian Silver Blue and Flame Point Siamese. Again, I think that things are pulling a little oranger on camera than they are. This has more of like a salmony, pinker vibe to it than I think you're seeing. So I might hold these together and make something out of them. I've really enjoyed working with this yarn in the past. I have worked with the DK version for my Simple Thing, which I talked about in my last few videos, and I used the fingering weight version, which this is, for a shawl as well, a single skein shawl. So I'm looking forward to using these. There weren't that many options, especially of the fingering weight, and I don't know exactly if these will look great together, but I think I'm going to try to knit up a swatch and see kind of like what this actually ends up looking like in knit form, and if I want to use these together. If not, I'll probably go for some sort of like small shawl for both of them separately. If I want to use them together, I'll probably try to go for a tee or a tank. Also in Huntsville, there's a second yarn store called Sparkle Studio, and it's in this artist space thing called Low Mill. It was formerly a mill, and now they have all of these spaces for rent. A bunch of artists and other businesses have moved into different suites there, and one of them is this yarn store, Sparkle Studio. So from Sparkle Studio, I got this yarn. This is the Creepy Cotton Sock by Dying Wishes Yarn Co. This is a 50% superwash merino, 50% cotton yarn, and it's 436 yards per 100 grams. This gray color is called Storm Cloud, and this blue color is called Reflection. I hope to make a striped tee with this. I thought this was fun because I don't see that many cotton blend yarns from indie dyers, so I really was interested in buying it. If I recall correctly, I think there was maybe only one skein of this, or not that many skeins of these yarns in general. So that's why I picked up one of each of these, and what is that? 870-ish yards should be plenty to make like a tee or like a 3/4 length top of some kind. Also from Fiber Artwork, I got some more Bucksnort Alpaca Ranch yarn. If you've been around for a while, you know that I got some Bucksnort Alpaca Ranch yarn quite a while ago. I made a Sunday morning wrap, I think, from it. A pattern by Espace Tricot. This yarn is from an alpaca ranch in Grant, Alabama, which I believe is in North Alabama somewhere. This yarn is from Junior. It is 100% alpaca, and there's about 200 yards in here. I believe I weighed it, and it's somewhere around 2 ounces. Last time, I think in 2022, is the last time I went to Sparkle Studio, because in 2023, when I tried to go, it was closed. I got Shooter. Shooter is what I made the shawl out of. That's the name of the alpaca. I believe they told me Junior was not born then, so Junior is a young alpaca. And I have a tiny bit of the Shooter left that I might use with this. I'll probably make something like a Simple Thing or a Sophie shawl with this. I only got one skein, I believe, so something small, but I just think it's fun to support a Alabama local alpaca ranch. The last thing I got in Alabama was 2 mystery yarn skeins. So these were bought for me by my fiance's mom. She travels to Montana. She has family who has a home out there. We went out there once, and they're in the Great Falls area, so I got to go to Farmer's Daughter Fibers. It was super cool. She gave me these 2 skeins for Christmas. I don't know exactly what they are. She said they were wool, and they feel like wool, but they also feel like really soft. Now that I'm familiarizing myself with wool breeds, I still can't tell you what it is, but it's probably something merino adjacent. I don't know. It's very soft. You can tell it's pretty rustic because it has this like crap in it. It's full of like little leaves and twigs and stuff. This is 217 grams, so I don't really know. It looks like a worsted for sure. I'll probably try to find some sort of like shawl pattern because I don't really know what else I would make with it. Maybe a slip over? That might be something to consider, but I don't have too much of it, but it's super pretty and cool. I'd love to kind of use it maybe on its own so that it can really be on display. And yeah, it's fun. I'm glad that it's fun to have a family member, I guess, who is willing and often likes to bring me just random yarns from traveling. She brought me a yarn from Ireland last year that is in my Stockholm slipover, which we'll probably talk about in my next podcast after it's blocked. I'm manifesting that will have happened by then. We can hope. The last acquisitions of actual yarn I have are from the Explorer Knits and Fibers Farmers Market collection. I had those sent to my parents' house because the end of the like shipping period for the yarn coincided with around when we wanted to travel to Huntsville for the holidays, and just in case we weren't in our house, I sent it to my parents who are nearby and were watching our cat. When my fiance dropped Lola off with my parents, he was able to get this yarn from them that they'd gotten a couple days before in the mail. So I barely had time to open it before we left, but I will show you what I got. Now I did talk about these yarns in my de-stash video. I like weighed them all out so I know how much more than 100 grams each skein is. And I'll try to go relatively quick just because we still have a lot of spinning to talk about. This is the colorway Potahto on Earthy sock. This is a 100% non-superwash merino and it's 436 yards per 100 grams. I got 2 skeins of this. This is the yarn that made me want to buy from this collection. I just really loved it. Tentative plan is an Oak Haven tee by Carrie Bloomer. It kind of depends how variegated this ends up looking when it's knit up, because that is a really intricate pattern and I don't want anything to kind of take away from the lace work there, but if it doesn't end up competing with the yarn, I think that will be what I do with this. Otherwise, some other kind of tee. Next up, I got the In Bloom colorway on the Denali sock base. That is an 80/20 superwash merino nylon sock yarn, 2-ply, 400 yards, 100 grams. So one of those kind of typical 2-ply sock bases. I have 3 skeins of this and I plan to make some sort of sweater out of it. Don't know what yet. I just really like the colors. I think it's very pretty. And then last, I got Cashmere Caverns sock base with the colorway Catch of the Day. So this is 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, and 435 yards per 100 grams. I have 2 skeins of this and I plan to hold it with this skein from Earl Grey Fiber Co. This is the Darjeeling sock base from Earl Grey Fiber Co. It is a superwash merino nylon, 75%, 25%, and it's 463 yards per 100 grams. This colorway is It'll Block Out. It is, I believe, an exclusive to Black Squirrel in Berkeley, and this dyer doesn't dye anymore. This is like, I think, part of their last batch. So I really wanted to grab it, and I thought that some of the darker, like, colors in this would go well with Catch of the Day. I plan to make something that has pretty, like, a good amount of color work, maybe more like all over color work somehow. I don't know exactly what that will look like yet. I have some patterns flagged, but I think once I'm closer to using this yarn, we can talk a little bit more about what sorts of things I'm thinking. So those are all of my yarn acquisitions. Quite a few. I'm hoping that I won't have any yarn to share with you in the near future, except yarn that I'm spinning, which is the perfect segue into the next thing that I have to talk about. I'm gonna drink some of my coffee while we do this. So, for my birthday, which was now a few weeks ago, I asked my boyfriend to buy me an EEW 6.1 from Dreaming Robots. I have been thinking about spinning for a long time. I've done some drop spindling. I found it very slow and hard to keep up with, and I wanted the progress to be faster. I'm like I guess I'm just too impatient. Maybe now that I've like done a good amount of spinning over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks, I would have more patience for it. But I also think the gravity aspect was really frustrating to me. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I asked for an e-spinner. I was a little worried that maybe it wouldn't catch my interest, but I needn't have worried because I have been obsessed since I got it. For about 2 weeks, I probably didn't even knit at all. Luckily, to start out with, I had a little bit of fiber from when I was trying drop spindling, and those were the first things that I decided to spin. So these are 2 finished skeins, and this was my first one. I had started using this on the drop spindle. This is BCB Fibers Corriedale. It's about 80 grams and 130 yards. This was my first one. I wasn't sure if I wanted to ply it, so I spun it straight up on the bobbin, all of it, and then I used my ball winder to make a center pull ball to ply from that. Since then, I have made my own Lazy Kate out of a shoebox and 2 knitting needles just stuck through to hold the bobbins, and that's how I've been plying. Although I did also ply this one by winding it into a center pull ball. This is also BCB Fibers Corriedale. I'd read somewhere that Corriedale was a good starter fiber, and I think that's true. Obviously, these aren't perfect. I don't know exactly what I'll do with them. I might try to felt them at some point, or I might, I mean, I have a lot of yarn that I'm not really sure what to do with because I don't know if I want to make garments out of it. So maybe as we're considering moving into our next place and that kind of thing, I'll be trying to figure out how to make some sort of like wall art or other sort of knitted or yarny items that are more home goods than garments or accessories. So these are my first 2. Next, I placed an order from Napa Valley Fibers, and I got a few different things, almost all of which I have spun up. So I've been trying to spin things in like roughly chronological order from when I bought it, kind of. This is my first spin from that order. This is Blueface Luster. It was this like beautiful blue, aqua, greeny, yellow braid. And I think you can kind of see that I did improve quite a bit here. This is the last of my skeins that I made that I've like washed and like hanged up like this. The rest haven't been washed, so they look, I mean, I think the spin looks better, but the yarns look kind of wonky still. This one ended up being 112 grams and about 126 yards. The braids were 4 ounces. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think the colors ended up looking pretty good. I tried like a version, I guess, of a fractal spin with it where I like split the braid in half and then I split one of those halves in 2 halves, I think, and 1 into 4. I don't remember exactly how I did it, but I did try to make it so that it would be like mixed up throughout, and I think it ended up working pretty well. My spin is still obviously not perfect, but I could see maybe making some sort of like cowl or something out of this. I don't know. From there, I also got a tasting pack of Corriedale that was just 4 1-ounce like things of top of 4 different colors, and I got 2 of them, and my plan was to use, you know, like spin up 1 ounce on one bobbin, spin up the other ounce on the other bobbin, ply them together, and like have 2 ounces of each of them that maybe I could work into a cowl or a small shawl. I've worked up a decent amount of that. Here is the finished one. This one I have plied. Like I said, I have not washed it yet, so it's a little bit, it twists a little. I think some of that will come out when I wash it and sort of set it a little bit more. And then the other colors in the pack were this blue, this like navy blue. These are resting. I will ply them when I'm done spinning up the other one, which is this color, this rust color. I've done one. My task for tonight probably is to finish this other ounce. And then there's one more color, and that's this green. I think these will be the next yarns I work on after. The final thing I bought from Napa Valley Fibers is this Shropshire top. And this was in a beautiful braid with a variety of different blues. The way I managed the colors on this was to just break the braid in half. Half of it I just kind of spun as is, and then the other half I pulled it apart into like a rough gradient. So I applied like one gradient with kind of just the colors presenting as they did as I spun it up. And this I am so impressed by. It's a little bit scraggly right now because it hasn't been washed, but I feel like this looks like real yarn. My only acquisitions that are in the mail right now are 2 quantities of Shropshire to spin as I spun this. One is just a white, like a natural color. I have 4 ounces of that. This was 4 ounces. I have 4 ounces of like a darker purple and blue combination, and I'm hoping that maybe I'll make a slip over of these. I found Shropshire super fun to spin, and it's not that easy to find, which is part of why I decided I would just buy what I could find. It's very like springy. It's definitely not as smooth as the Corriedale or the BFL I've spun also. And it was like, I don't know, it felt like puffy and springy. I don't have many technical terms in my repertoire, but I really, really enjoyed spinning it. I thought it would be less fun. It's a little coarse. I don't know if I would want to make a shawl out of it, but I think something like a slip over will be perfect. So I'm hoping that I can spin the other ones to a similar-ish gauge to this. This is, I believe, about 360 some yards, so probably like a sport weight. We'll see kind of how that looks after I wash it. What I do have a nitty knotty, a small 1 yard collapsible one, but my favorite way to hank it up is using my Amish Swift. So that one is like the cross pose kind of one, and you put it together, you put the pins in, and I've just measured how much it is around. And so I can measure the approximate yardage by counting the times I wrap it around the Swift. And I'm finding that because it's a little larger than the yard, it's easier to turn into a hank. And I'm just like, the wrapping motion is a little bit easier on me, I think. And the hanks are a little more manageable because they're longer but fewer wraps. So that's just how I've been doing this. Maybe one day I'll get a 2-yard nitty naughty, but so far this is working just fine. So I think tonight I'll probably try to wash these 2 hanks and get them drying so that hopefully I'll be able to hank them up, make them pretty. But I'm just shocked by how much I'm improving. It's a very fast process. And I guess when you're a true beginner in something, the like amount you have to get better is so vast that the early improvements are super, super fast. So, you know, like I'll definitely level off at some point, probably relatively soon. There's things I want to try in the near future. I'll probably want to 3-ply some yarns, try chain plying. I haven't been brave enough for that, but we'll probably get there soon. These are all the things that I've actually made. I have a few extra quantities to show you from 2 different orders. My first other order is from Revolution Fibers. I have 2 packs. I'll try not to crinkle them too much. The first one is Shetland. This is the Forest Plum set, I believe. Each of these is 1 ounce. And there's, I think, 6 colors in here. 2 like reddish colors and 4 grain. I, as you may have been able to figure out, am kind of on a fiber trying spree. So I've been just buying, I've been repeat buying Corriedale, but mostly I've been buying different fibers to try and just see what it's like to spin different things. The last pack is this Revolution Fibers blend, or the last pack from Revolution Fibers. This one, let me open this one. So this has a variety of different yarns, and I think most of them are silk blends. This one looks like it's probably, one of them is pure merino at least, and I think this one is, but they all have different names. I'll link the site and you can see what each of them is, but I thought this would be a fun way to try out silk blends. I've heard merino isn't like the absolute best beginner fiber, although it's definitely the most available because it's so smooth. I think silk probably adds to that smoothness. But yeah, I think that these are really pretty and fun, and like will probably be a fun and relatively like low cost, low effort way to try out silk blends. I think one of them has some viscose as well, and it'll just be fun to try these out. And I think, you know, they're like fun colors. So if I'm able to spin them up into something that resembles actual yarn, this is the one with viscose. It has tweed, a little tweedy one. If I'm able to spin these up into something that is resembling yarn, I might be able to use it as a contrast color in something, and it would just be fun. So that is that. And then I have 3 more braids from a company called, I believe, Banshee Fiber Arts. It's an Etsy store. The world of hand-dyed braids on Etsy is vast and very fun, and I went crazy adding stuff to my cart, but I did manage, luckily, to only buy from this store, barring the 2 orders that are coming in, of Shropshire to make an actual project with. So I have 3 more braids of 3 different fibers that I'm excited to try. The first one is Cheviot. I hope I'm saying these approximately correctly. Sorry if I'm not. Please feel free to correct me in the comments. So this is Cheviot. These are all 4-ounce braids from Banshee Fiber Art Studio. Here's on the bag. feels pretty nice. I love the like bubblegummy colors. I think that's so fun. This one, so they have these like beautiful gradients. Most of their things are these gradients, and the other two I have are. So this is Falkland. Yeah, so this is 100% Falkland. Glad I got this. It's like a little bit different. I do tend generally towards like greeny blues, purples, cooler colors, so I thought this one was fun. And the last one is Rambouillet. Again, sorry for my pronunciation. And this is another gradient that I thought was very fun. I've come really close to ordering a couple extra things from their store. There's so many kinds of fiber that I want to try. I think I'm like trying to balance my desire to like try to spin a bunch of stuff with keeping in mind that like generally speaking, I think it would be nice to be able to spin something that I will then be able to knit into a project. I want to try a bunch of fibers and a bunch of different wools in particular. I don't think I'm ready to try like cotton, wool blends maybe, but I want to be able to spin in quantities that I'll like use in something, and having a bunch of like 125-ish gram quantities of different fiber types that are all like these fun colors, that don't necessarily go together in terms of the fiber feel or color, is not something that I want to do too much. So I have cooled off in terms of the speed of spinning quite a bit. I think for a while I was doing like a braid a day, which probably isn't even really good for me. I mean, I think my posture was okay. I was sitting at a desk. I was like trying to be mindful of like how my body felt as I was doing it. But I've cooled off the amount that I'm spinning because I am knitting again. I have a lot of wedding stuff that I've been taking care of too, so that's kind of cut into my general free downtime to do things like knit or spin. So I'm trying to just keep in mind, like, I want to be able to use the things that I spin, especially if I'm not able to spin things that are fun for other people to use. I don't want to buy fibers that don't feel okay with like certain commercial fibers. I might be bringing my hand spun to yarn stores and kind of like comparing it and seeing how I feel about it with different commercial yarns. But generally speaking, I am trying to stash down everything. Obviously, I am not starting with a huge amount of fiber to work with when I got my e-spinner, so it's natural that I kind of went on a little bit of a spending spree in terms of fiber, but I'm trying to like cool that down and think harder about it. Maybe like next year, I think sometime in the fall, there is a Northern California fiber fair, and that might allow me to try out and feel different wools. Because that's the other thing, is I can't necessarily go to a store and touch all of these fibers. So, like I don't need things that are next to skin soft necessarily. I'm kind of okay spinning to spin. I do have friends who are knitting now who may want the things that I give. I might try to felt with some of these after I use them if I don't think that they would be like next to skin soft. Like there's options, but I'm trying now to balance my desire to try new fibers with my desire to keep my stash in check. I'm going to try to spin all of these things before I'm buying new things. So hopefully this is the last like huge fiber haul you see for quite a while until I've used all of these things. Hopefully you see me using these, and hopefully you don't see me bringing in any new yarn to my stash that's pre-spun yarn, because I really don't need any of that either. I am working on my de-stash. In my next video, probably you'll see me de-stashing some more of my bins. I've been itching to do more of that actually. It's been a lot of fun. So you'll probably see me do that maybe more than monthly. Like, I'm trying to keep it in check and go slow, like think about things, but I am really like enjoying the like tabulating the data of my yarn and seeing what I want to get rid of. It's kind of scratching that like decluttering itch I get every once in a while. So that might come a little sooner. And I think in my next video, I will be arranging some kind of giveaway. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is incredible. I'm so thankful to all of you who have subscribed. If you're interested in that giveaway, go ahead and make sure that you're subscribed if you're not, so that you can see all of the details in my next video. What I'd love to hear from you is what you like to see in a giveaway. What sort of things do you enjoy? I have some yarns in my stash in mind of things that are cool and nice that I would be probably willing to part with, but would you prefer a gift card? Do you prefer notions? I'm open to ideas. So let me know, please, what you would like to see in a giveaway. Nothing crazy. I'm not going to break the bank, but I would love to do something nice for all of you because you've been very supportive. So thanks so much for that. That's all. Just half-baked reflections on destashing and adding all this fiber and dealing with all of the new stuff I've brought in with a side of almost finished objects. I'm excited to try on those items for you in my next podcast on my Instagram. You can find me there. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm Lefty_knits, I believe, on Blue Sky. I've been trying to post a bit there as well. I'm working on my consistency. I feel like I have a lot to share now that I'm spinning, and that's going kind of fast. And I will have these sweaters to share as well. So plenty coming up. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a like. And like I said, consider subscribing, especially as I have a giveaway coming up in my next couple of videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.